Government hands over National Theatre to CBN for rehabilitation.
The Lagos Creative and Entertainment Center project.
Police arrest 3 cybercrime suspects in Edo State.
More poor and vulnerable Nigerians benefit from federal government's conditional cash transfer scheme.
As I go now, I share into 3. 1 enter my business, 1 is for food, 1 for maintenance of the house.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall take on the second part of our conversation on the Nigeria Economic Sustainability Plan.
The biting effects of the coronavirus pandemic on the global and domestic economy have compelled many businesses to either shut down or shut in.
Indeed, the economic uncertainties trailing the pandemic prompted the establishment of the Economic Sustainability Committee by President Muhammadu Buhari in March this year. And the committee, of course, was led by Vice President Yemi Osinbajo, and it has since last month turned in its report, now known as the Nigeria Economic Sustainability Plan 2020.
Good Morning Nigeria's edition of the 3rd July looked at the components of the plan with 2 economic and investment analysts who generally lauded its objectives to create jobs, support small businesses, make local content a priority, reflect the economy, and wedge it from slipping into recession following disruptions occasioned by the novel coronavirus pandemic.
Now, one of the analysts we had on that occasion, Professor Ken Ife, who is a development economist, described the Economic Sustainability Plan as a culmination of several economic plans to steer the nation's economy out of the persistent threat of recession, now exacerbated by the global pandemic of coronavirus.
Now, the other guest in that edition, Niyi Akinsiju, a financial and investment analyst, sees the plan as a transitional intervention to bolster the economy, bearing in mind that the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, which was a much earlier economic roadmap, will be winding down or retiring this year, 2020, using Niyi Akinsiju's phrase.
Well, more or less, the 2 analysts noted that Nigeria over time has developed proven expertise for managing recession or veering off its course. Hence, the Economic Sustainability Plan becomes, as it were, a mega plan for mega spending by government to achieve mega results. Now, some of the anticipated results of the plan include generating millions of jobs through agriculture, housing, and many other sectoral value chains in the informal sector.
And concerns were, however, raised by our guests in that edition as to whether the funding of NESP will be left to commercial banks or will entail direct intervention from the Central Bank of Nigeria for consistency and sustainability of the roadmap.
Now, also highlighted was the need for agencies of government responsible for wealth creation and employment generation to key into the plan without delay and deliver as envisaged.
On paper, the Economic Sustainability Plan looks great, but what is in the plan for SMEs in the informal sector, and how realistic are its lofty objectives, particularly with regards to creating millions of jobs across value chains to mitigate the effect of the coronavirus pandemic?
Well, this morning we shall have the Honorable Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Zainab Ahmed, and other guests who will be joining us to further dissect the Nigeria Economic Sustainability Plan on the conversation segment of Good Morning Nigeria. My name is Kingsley Osadolo, and I welcome you to the program, reaching you as always on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We're broadcasting live from our Abuja headquarters studios.
And I am Kirian Umar. Many thanks for joining us this morning. And of course, we are hale and hearty this morning, Kingsley, and of course, we ready to deliver on this particular edition of the program. Of course, you should expect the complimentary segments in the course of today's edition. For now, Nolin Ebel Ame is already seated for the morning news. Good morning, Nolin.
Good morning, Kirian and Kingsley. Good morning, Nigeria. Here is the news. The number of confirmed COVID-19 cases in Nigeria is now 32,558 as the Nigeria Center for Disease Control, NCDC, last night announced 571 new cases. Lagos State has 152 of the new cases, while Ebonyi State has 108. 53 cases were confirmed in Edo State, 46 in Ondo, 38 in FCT, 20 in Oyo, 19 in Kwara, and 17 in Plateau. Osun, Bayelsa, Ekiti, and Katsina states recorded 14 cases each, while Akwa Ibom, Kaduna, and Rivers had 11 cases each. 10 new cases were also confirmed in Niger State, 7 in Ogun, 6 in Kano, 4 in Cross River, and 2 in Bauchi. Lagos State remains the epicenter of the COVID-19 pandemic in Nigeria, with 12,427 confirmed cases so far, followed by FCT with 2,576 cases, while Edo has climbed to the third spot on the table with 1,731 cases. Out of the 32,558 confirmed cases, 13,447 patients who recovered have been discharged, with the death toll now 740. Federal government is addressing the challenge of low power voltage in the country with the construction of more substations to boost and provide stable electricity. Minister of Power Salim Amman inspected one of these infrastructures in Jigawa State ahead of its inauguration.
Up to 90 or even 100% completed electrically. Here we want to improve the voltage that we have not been getting before. And I also want to use this opportunity to urge the contractors, all power contractors, to come back to the site and so that they can deliver.
We are expecting to have about 50 industries as time goes on because of the power availability now.
Towards ensuring the growth of Nigeria's creative industry, the federal government says the National Theatre of Nigeria will be transformed into a world-class edifice with state-of-art facilities under a private-public partnership scheme. Speaking at the symbolic handing over of the National Theatre to the Central Bank of Nigeria, the Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, insists that the National Theatre has not been ceded to any group or persons. The minister maintains that the transformation will engender job creation and economic growth as the Ministry of Information and Culture remains the custodian of the edifice.
Project. A public-private partnership, PPP, has two phases. Phase 1 is to restore and upgrade the National Theatre to its glory days, while Phase 2 will be the development of the fallow land within the premises of the edifice.
It is imperative that we strive to create opportunities that will keep our youth engaged, as it will portend great dangers for the progress of our nation if we allow these talents to go to waste.
About 20,000 poor and vulnerable in Niger State have received their May and June payment of the federal government's conditional cash transfer program, totaling 480 million naira. The program, which is the present administration's social investment initiative, seeks to support the livelihood of the poor and the vulnerable.
Enter my business. One is for food, one is for maintenance of the house.
It's helping me in many ways. My children's school fees, my business, many things, I can't count it all.
Apart from the behavioral change, we have also taught them how to do micro businesses within their domains.
And now to security. The Nigeria Police Cybercrime Unit, Interpol National Central Bureau, Abuja, has arrested 3 suspects in Edo State for cybercrime-related offenses, including advance fee fraud, money laundering, and romance scam. Force Public Relations DCP Frank Mba, in a statement, explains that the suspects were arrested in Uromi, Edo State, following investigations into suspected fraudulent online procurement and supply of COVID-19 protective masks received through the Interpol NCB Wiesbaden, Germany. In a similar development, police operatives have also rescued an American citizen who was confined in a Lagos hotel. The victim, who hails from Washington, D.C., USA, and is a retired civil servant in the U.S., arrived to Nigeria on 13th February 2019. Investigations reveal that the suspect, Chukwebuka, also forcefully collected and took control of her credit and debit cards, as well as the operation of her bank accounts, including the receipt of her monthly retirement benefits and allowances over the period of 15 months. Troops of Operation Hadarindaji have rescued 5 kidnapped victims and arrested a local gun fabricator in Sokoto. A statement by the Coordinator Defense Media Operations, Major General John Enenche, indicates that 3 of the liberated victims were rescued sequel to a credible intelligence at Isa local government area, while the other 2 were rescued at Yayi village in Sabon Brni local government area of Sokoto State. General Enenche notes that 5 members of Yan Sakai group and local gun fabricator was also arrested with 10 den guns. Also, Maga Kiabu, along Maga Kiabu, Tadurga village. Similarly, 302 Russell cows and 412 sheep were recovered in Daki, Tawas and Tashar Kuturu in Anka and Talata Mafara local government areas of Zamfara State. That's the morning news for now. The program continues with Kinsley and Kieran after this break. I am Norlin Ebel Ame.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Next for us is business news, and here is our correspondent, Kunle Adeyeye.
All aspects of the global economy have been staggered since the outbreak of COVID-19. Countries have therefore evolved measures to come out of the woods and put their economies back on track. Nigeria, which is also caught in the web, has come up with policies to stabilize the economy and strengthen the business environment. A professor of capital market, Uche Uwaleke, has advised investors to view the stakes as long-term investments.
I would advise investors to number one, adopt a cautious approach, okay, and defray from highly speculative activity, and then number two, also adopt a longer-term view, a longer-term horizon. So investors in the market shouldn't be thinking of buying now and selling tomorrow, and making a profit, but a situation where they identify fundamentally good stocks, those with good fundamentals, okay, go in to take positions in those ones and then hold them for a little longer.
He emphasized that uncertainties being experienced recently in the stock market are not peculiar to Nigeria. With business news, I'm Kunle Adeyeye.
Thank you, Kunle, for that report. And next is a newspaper review.
Our newspaper reviewer, Bayo Ateb, is with us in the studios this morning. Bayo, good morning and welcome.
Thank you, Kinsley. Good morning. Good morning, Kevin.
Bayo, you're welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, Nigeria.
Let's begin with the Nigerian pilot. COVID-19, Lagos doctors may begin strike today. It's on page 5. Why 2020 budget was increased despite drop in revenue, the presidency, is also captured on page 5. And Magu fights back, says AGF Malami illegally approved auction of recovered assets, also approved bid for sale of forfeited crude oil diesel vessels. I am calling for probe of Malami, Ladi DB Mohammed, as according to Magu's lawyer. Now, Malami insists that his approval for auction of vessels legal. Well, all of that, page 8. Now, Kogi Cross River Health Commissioners to face COVID-19 probe is on page 7. Buhari's directive defies as Boni-led committee is sued is on page 10. We are in state of anarchy in southern Kaduna, Sokapu says. That's on page 6. AGF Malami denies buying 300 million mansion for his son. It's on page 8. 2023 presidency. Blame Tinubu, Akonde, fire me if Southwest fails. It's on page 8. PDP, APC, spar over corruption allegations. That's on page 5. Habibio, ex-NDDC MD, trade allegations over corruption. That's on page 6. Kinsley.
Okay, let's also take a look at the Punch newspaper. Punch from top to bottom. Federal government and China are finalizing negotiations on 43.24 billion naira Ibadan port. That's on page 39 in Greater Dede. Federal government orders power projects contractors back to sites. That's page 39. And on page 22, I didn't campaign for Buhari while with Jonathan. That's attributed to the former National Security Advisor, Dasuki. Petrol subsidy gulped 101.6 billion naira in 3 months, according to NNPC. That's on page 33 as well. This story is on EFCC. It says seized properties cornered by top EFCC officials and Magu's friends. That's attributed to the panel currently investigating the now suspended acting chairman of the EFCC. It says suspended commission boss failed to account for 332 recovered houses. All allegations are lies and concocted to tarnish Magu's image, says counsel. All of those stories in greater detail you find on page 2. Now, stranded Nigerian girls from Lebanon on arrival at the International Week of the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport on Saturday. Those are the photographs you find there on the front page of the Punch newspaper. Below that, you have other headlines. 10 billion naira fraud. Kano rice farmers officials face prosecution. NDDC reps probe 70 billion naira payments to non-performing 1,700 contractors. That's page 12. Special force policemen feared killed in Kaduna road crash. Details on page 12. Attackers killed 22 southern Kaduna people in 3 days. That's attributed to Sokapu. Details on page 12. Fraudster detains American lady in Lagos hotel. Defrauds her of 18.5 million naira. Details on pages 4 and 5. And federal government comments air peace as UK denies airline landing permit. That's on page 12. Bayo.
Right, let's start with the update on COVID-19. Nigeria now has 32,588 COVID-19 cases. We have registered 740 deaths. Over the weekend, Friday, we registered 575, Saturday, 664, Sunday, 571, which means between last Friday and now, we have had 1,810 cases. The numbers are still rising. They have not beginning to nosedive as we are currently expecting. Meanwhile, 13,477 have been discharged. If you deduct our competitors that have passed on from COVID-19, we now have 18,371 persons in hospital. That is to emphasize that COVID-19 is around and still ravaging, and we must continue to observe all the required protocols. Meanwhile, Air Peace has evacuated some foreigners from Nigeria in 2 aircrafts. One went for Malaysia, took persons to Malaysia and India. On return, it came with 300 stranded Nigerians from Malaysia, Thailand, and India. The second aircraft also came with some Nigerians. The federal government has handed over the National Theatre to the Central Bank of Nigeria and the Bankers Committee. And there is a lot of hope from there because the Honorable Minister of Information was there and also highlighted the benefits that's to come from that. The Governor of Central Bank indicated that about 20 billion is expected to be spent in the edifice. You recall the edifice was built for the FESTAC, the World Congregation of Black and Arts Festival of Arts and Culture. And up till it began to depreciate, it was a prominent edifice, eye-catching, but it has become a shadow of itself because of depreciation. And the initiative there is quite tremendous, because with that involvement, the governor of Central Bank is saying that they will use it as an initiative to give a four-pronged approach to young men, particularly in the area of music, movies, fashion, and information technology. And it is expected also that after that of Lagos, there will be one for Kano, Port Harcourt, and also Enugu. So some impetuses for our youth. The Minister of Petroleum Resources, Minister of State for that matter, Timothy Silva, has clarified that federal government is no longer providing anything like subsidy, and therefore, without subsidy, market forces would determine pump price. So as world price of crude oil goes up, so shall the pump price go up, and as it comes down, so shall it also be reduced. And he has clarified that federal government had decided not to continue to subsidize premium methyl spirit, that is petrol, and government will only regulate to ensure that the commodity is not priced arbitrarily. Well, what is there to talk about again? Politics. Impeachment. There is initiative by the Ondo State House of Assembly to impeach the sitting deputy governor. A letter written to the chief judge of the state came back with a reply that from all indications the constitutional provision was not complied with. 14 members of the House of Assembly signed it, 9 abstained, and it's 2/3 that is required, and consequently that has been stalled.
Well, Nigerian politics, we are used to impeachment. We are used to also having a minority in the House of Assembly impeaching either speaker, deputy speaker, or even deputy governors. We have it now in Enugu. Remember, last dispensation we had such, for the deputy governor as at that time. So it's not
for having a poultry.
Exactly, for owning a poultry. So it's really laughable, But what has taken place here now is a clear indication that somebody is paying attention to what the law says, because they could not succeed based on what you have read out now.
Well, the other development is from Jalingo, Taraba State. A 20-man committee to engage 1,000 workers in each of the 16 local government area of Taraba State has been inaugurated. The chairman of that committee, Aminu Babali, said that the recruitment will be transparent and it will be devoid of political consideration. It is an opportunity to give chances to the children of the poor and the ordinary persons. He says that the committee will comprise of the Christian Association of Nigeria, Nigeria Supreme Council of Islamic Affairs, National Union of Road Transport Workers, and several other groups, including women, civil society organizations, youth organizations, and respected traditional rulers. And he has said that this committee will recruit the people in a transparent manner, and they will ensure that everybody, it goes around irrespective of political affiliations. So again, you recall the controversy at the National Assembly and the directive by the National Assembly that sin should be halted. But apparently it looks as if it is going on in Taraba State.
Oh, well, we'll see how it plays out. I think we had already discussed that a couple of times on Good Morning Nigeria. There are a number of issues we've raised, the last one being what my colleague Kieran commented on, namely the attempt by the Ondo State House of Assembly to proceed against the deputy governor by way of impeachment and subsequent removal from office. I think it's significant what is playing out in terms of the reaction of the chief judge of the state, because the number of members of the State House of Assembly who signed the impeachment notice fell below the required threshold. And one of the steps that those who did not approve of the step took was to write directly to the chief judge, dissociating themselves from the step being taken by their colleagues in the State House of Assembly. That's also novel. Otherwise, in the past, it's the House of Assembly that will package it, and then the chief judge, oftentimes what we have seen in impeachment moves is to say that the chief judge has no opinion on the matter, that once you get the articles of impeachment and the notice from the State House of Assembly, then you constitute a 7-man committee. You constitute a 7-man committee, persons of integrity, and so on and so forth. And then they proceed with the investigation. They turn in their report to you, and then, of course, you forward the report back to the State House of Assembly. There is also the other leg, which is to say that the matter is sub judice, because that was also brought to the attention of the Chief Judge. I'm not quite sure, with the greatest respect, how that pans out, because there is ordinarily no intervention of the judiciary in a legislative process, unless, of course, the legislature has not complied with either the Constitution or other laws or its own extant rules. In that case, you can intervene. So the idea of the sub judice is something that assuming they're able to sway the required number of members now to say, okay, fine, we want to proceed with the impeachment, assuming. Then what happens with the other leg of saying that the matter is sub judice? It depends on the gravamen of the issue. Yes.
All right. The issue is 2/3 of the majority. And currently, the 9 people that were not signatories, among them, 2 of them have been suspended.
All right.
So the arithmetic is beginning to change.
No, it won't change. It won't change. It's not the number of Kyrian. You know, it has always been a touchy point. It's not the number of members who are present. It is the number, 2/3 of the totality of the members.
Of the entire House. Yes, it can't be those who are present. It's up to 2/3 of the totality of the members of the House of Assembly.
Yeah, but...
All right.
I know you want to go to the editorial. No. There's something that is... Sorry, you have another issue?
We're trying to round off
I was just saying, there's this report. It's been trending over the weekend. And it says that a fraudster detained an American lady in a Lagos hotel for about a year. The question to ask is, how was that possible? Well, the name of the hotel has not been mentioned. Yes. Now, what are the managers of the hotel? I mean, if a person is detained, it means that apparently there's what in law you refer to as false imprisonment. So there were no housekeepers who were going around the rooms to clean up the rooms, and consistently you found somebody 365 days in the room without raising questions?
A retired civil servant from Washington was lured to Nigeria.
We also heard of a Filipino that was the same thing was meted on her in Enugu, where nobody knows the truth about the situation until somebody comes to explain it further for us to appreciate what happened.
Yes, the first PRO has been on record.
Okay.
That they have arrested the person's
Bayo, we call it a day on this segment, right? Okay. So we'd like to appreciate you for your analysis, and I hope to see you again tomorrow for more from this very particular segment of Good Morning Nigeria. Right, now we are going to take a short break. When we come back, we're of course going to be treating the main item for conversation for today. Now we thank you for staying with us up to this moment on the program. And of course, our topic today is the Nigeria Economic Sustainability Plan. And of course, the focus of our conversation is exactly that. And of course, the topic was first discussed on the 3rd of July, 2020 with Professor Ken Ife, a development economist, and Niyi Akinsiju, a financial and investment analyst, as guests. Before we continue with the conversation today, here are some excerpts from that edition of the program.
The Nigerian Bureau of Statistics told us that unemployment, had gone up. About 39 million plus Nigerians had lost their jobs. The National Employers Consultative Assembly said 75% of businesses, were not functional, as at May ending. And now, when you put all this together, it impacts what the summary of what the prophet said: reduction in purchasing power, impacts on supplies, and of course the capacity of manufacturers to produce more and all that. So the ESP is principally attending to this, addressing these challenges.
What's special about this is there's a handshake between the plans led by CBN and the plans led by that. There's a handshake, which hasn't been the case over the years, but it's very, very encouraging. Now, the plan locates itself on the need to bring in conventional wisdom on tackling recession of this magnitude, unlike the way we did it in 2016. And this is What is the nature of the challenge? The nature of the challenge is that the supply chain disruptions and all the lockdown, all of them culminated in an assault on the household consumption.
I am believing that the appropriate agencies, the NDE for instance, should have a proper understanding and context of the 774,000 jobs that will be created, and they will come out, and talk about it. Smidan, I am thinking that agencies involved would actually lead the thoughts, on the ESP as it affects them individually. That way it's easier to put in context the ESP.
How do we ensure greater diffusion of the resources that we have to the base of that economic pyramid? I have concerns that much of the intervention funds are warehoused through the commercial banking sector. Yeah. And of course, they still have to improve their integrity in reaching that base of the pyramid. So in other words, what are other creative mechanisms? And I have actually been talking to the CB, and I'm talking to the ministers. I'm talking to them about alternative ways of making sure that we can augment resources. Because there are platforms now that can take the intervention fund in, bring national savings money from bonds in, bring grants from federal government, bring grants from over $4 billion a year from development partners, bring all those into the pot, and then get some fund managers in to focus on value chains. Because one thing is to drop money to players along value chain. The other one is to have a dedicated fund manager for a value chain, for cotton value chain, that makes the link.
All right, so those were excerpts from our first conversation on the Economic Sustainability Plan. That was 10 days ago on Good Morning Nigeria. Today, we have with us in the studios now the Honorable Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Hajia Zainab Ahmed. Honorable Minister, pleasure to have you again on Good Morning Nigeria.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Okay. And joining us from our Benin Network Center, we would like to welcome Mike Obadan. Mike Obadan is a professor of economics and non-executive director of the Central Bank of Nigeria. Prof, delight to have you with us on the program. You can see him there in the middle of your screen. And then to the extreme right of your screen, would like to welcome Dr. Yushua Ango as an associate professor of business entrepreneurship and dean, School of Postgraduate Studies, Kaduna State University. He's joining us from our Kano Network Center. But gentlemen, you are regular guests on Good Morning Nigeria whenever we are discussing economic issues, so it's our pleasure to have you both join the Honorable Minister this morning.
All right, and we would like to start by engaging the Honorable Minister for a while before we can begin to talk to our guests. Right, Honorable Minister, what are the major components, of the Economic Sustainability Plan, that makes the ESP outstanding from all other plan or previous economic roadmaps we've had in the past? Because, of course, we've had such roadmaps that are short-lived, so to speak. These are short-term measures, right? But, of course, with the arrival of coronavirus, there has been need, to expand, the horizon of whatever intervention that you are doing economically. So what is very special about this one?
Well, thank you very much. First of all, the Nigeria Economic Sustainability Plan is a national plan. So it was developed together with all ministers, relevant ministers, with relevant heads of agencies, with the state governments, and also we consulted with the National Assembly. So it's not just the ministers or the presidency sitting down to do this plan. It was designed to be an intervention plan for 12 months. And we costed it at 2.3 trillion naira. With funding sources from special accounts that we had, we pulled 500 billion from there, and the president approved we can do that. Also, the National Assembly agreed that we could do that. 1.1 trillion of this plan is funding interventions, structured interventions from the central banks that will be channeled through DFIs, development finance institutions, microfinance banks, as well as commercial banks. So there are different categories. And then the third packet of funding is about 320 billion from multilateral, bilateral, external funding. And then the fourth is about 310 billion from other sources, which we hope, we're working with the private sector, will be from the private sector. So this economic sustainability plan is designed primarily to help stabilize the economy and provide cushion from the effect of the dual challenges that we have of COVID-19, as well as the crash in the crude oil price. But it's also designed to be a link between the ERGP, which expires in 2020, and the new national plan, which we've already started developing. So it's going to dovetail into the new national plan. So it's a transit plan for 12 months. The plan is designed to enhance our self-reliance in local production, in the use of local materials, in the use of local inputs largely, except where we don't have an option. We're planning to use local materials, local labor, local inputs. And it's also designed to be an economic stimulus for the whole of the economy to mitigate the potential of the economy going into recession, so that even if the economy goes into recession, the recession will be a shallow one. The National Bureau of Statistics had estimated that the Nigerian economy will go into recession by up to negative 4.2%. The World Bank, the IMF, they made similar projections. But our revised assessment, which we asked the NBS to do, is that if we're able to deploy the whole of this 2.3 trillion, that the impact of the recession will be less and we'll end up with a negative 0.59%, which is less than 5%. And that if all we're able to do is to spend this 500 billion that came from special account, then maybe we'll be saving the economy by about 1%, so maybe about 3.4% instead of 4.4%. So there's really a need for us to make sure we apply ourselves and spend the whole of this 2.3 trillion into the economy. How do we plan to do this, implement this plan, and to actually carry out this plan? First of all, there are several categories of programs that we designed. The first one is mass agricultural production. And the plan is to put into cultivation between 20,000, an additional 20,000 to 100,000 hectares of land into agricultural production. And this is to be done closely with the state governments because they have the land. The federal government has designed the program. We're sourcing the resources and will also provide support with inputs. This is meant to also create a lot of jobs. Because the design of the program is that farmers will be aggregated into clusters so that there is focus on value chains per cluster. Farmers will be supported with inputs in the form of structured, very, very, very low cost loans, sub 1%. And then there will be extensive supervision of the works of this. And then there will also be harnessing of outgrowth schemes that already exist by different clusters of private sector. And those schemes will be expanded. So we'll be able to put both farmers as well as youths either to farm directly or in the harvesting process or in any parts of the value chain, including uptake of the products as well as processing of the products to reduce our post-harvest losses. So closely linked to the agriculture project is the infrastructure project. And the first of that category is development of roads. Rural roads specifically have been extensively provided for to help us move goods from from farms to market. That will largely reduce the post-harvest losses, because one of the reasons why we lose a lot of the produce, which is sometimes fixed as high as 50%, is because we're not able to move the goods from the markets quickly, so from the farms to the market. In addition to road infrastructure projects, we also have other public works that is meant to employ youths that are up to about 1,000 in each of the 774 million local governments. So we will be able to put 774,000 youths to work. They're either building roads, or they're doing health extension works, or any kind of public work that we negotiate with the states, and the state confirm, and up to local government confirm that for this our area, this is the most essential things that we require. So it's not federal government that will be doing the work directly. We're just doing the planning and the coordination, but we're working together with the states. And we will also work with the states in how to identify these youths and how to get them and put them to jobs. Then we have a mass housing project, which is meant to develop up to 300,000 houses. And this, we know we might not be able to complete in 12 months. So we will design it such that it dovetails into the next year's budget and subsequent development plans. But this housing project is meant to also be in partnership with the states. States will provide land in good locations. States have committed to put some primary infrastructure in those lands. The design is for each state to have at least 10,000 houses in different pockets of land sizes that are allocated. In each housing development area, we hope to be able to create additional work, so there will be cluster of carpenters doing the carpentry work there to supply the doors and the windows. There will be welders there. There will be block builders on the site. And then we're engaging young firms of civil engineers, architects, young people that will be given maybe between 10 to 50 houses to build. So this will mean that they're able to directly develop the houses. There will be standard designs of the houses. The houses are designed to be very low cost, and the designs will be standard. So we're saving costs in design, because it will be one standard design which will be allocated in blocks of 50-50 to young professionals. Maybe a firm of 5 people that come together and put their skills together. And we hope that by doing this, that these houses will be at least 90% local materials will be used, and that the labor will be on the same site where the construction, the inputs for the houses will be in the same site where so there will be a lot of economic activity created, and the associated value chain effects.
Well, Honorable Minister, thank you very much for the issues that you have outlined. But tell us, what are the inherent threats and opportunities that have informed the Economic Sustainability Plan?
So first of all, the threat is that we're seeing the growth of our economy slowing down, and there is a major risk that we'll go into a recession, and if we don't act the way we have planned, it will be a deep recession. And you don't want a deep recession in an economy the size of Nigeria with 200 million people. Deep recession means, if you've seen what has happened in other countries of the world where you can't even get toilet paper, you have to go to another neighboring country to get it. You want to avoid that. So what we're doing is to make sure that we put people to work, that we grow what we eat and produce what we consume. And that's the directive of the president. And to make sure that we also directly address the health need, which is one of the major causes. So part of the projects we're undertaking is upgrading medical facilities, tertiary hospitals. The states also are putting in line some of their general hospitals also to be upgraded. So the opportunity we have from COVID-19 is we'll end up with better health care system in the country. We'll end up having expanded our agricultural production, having reduced our post-harvest losses, putting a lot of Nigerians into roads and building houses for people to live, homes that people can actually uptake and live.
All right. I'm concerned, Honourable Minister, about the role of subnational governments, because in the past, the subnational governments have been found wanting in terms of being able to generate resources on their own. And this time around, if what you have told us is going to be workable with the subnational government, how are you assuring Nigerians that these subnational governments are going to play the role which is expected of them, knowing full well that some of them are not, the governments are not produced by the government at the center, right? We have other parties that own governments at that level. So compliance becomes a problem. Are we sure that what you have painted now will translate into a general acceptance by the subnationals to ensure that the plan moves forward? Because we have had on several occasions and on different sectors of national economy where federal government policy is in place, yet state governments found it difficult, to adhere to such policies, right? So if that happens in this respect, right, I not foresee a situation where the plan will have issues, based on their own role in the entire arrangement.
I can tell you what we've noticed. What we've seen is that this COVID-19 has brought everybody close together. There is a strong bond, and everybody wants to make sure that their state is not thrown into a crisis, because it can go into a spiral that goes out of control. Everybody wants to make sure that they harness and retain as much jobs as possible, help small, medium enterprises within their state, help farmers to grow produce, because if we don't grow the food that we eat, we can have a food crisis as well. So we want to stave off food security, and also we want to improve insecurity in the country. How do you
improve security?
We want to improve security in the country. If we allow too many people to go out of jobs, that will increase the insecurity that we have. So we've been working closely together with the states, and the states have reviewed our plan. We have had discussions with them. We took inputs from them and made improvements, and they made some commitments. They said they will provide land. They said they will support us when the job creation, when the engagement of the youths come. It's because we're employing youths in their communities. We're not bringing people from anywhere. So you'll be employed in your local government to work. So the states have indicated commitment to work with us. And what happens if a state doesn't cooperate? It means we just move to the next location. That's what will happen. So the states know that the resources are available, and the only way they can take benefit from it for their states and their people is by working together with the federal government. They're actually in control of this largely, because they have the land, they have the people, and the works are taking place in their local governments, in their communities, in their states.
Well, Honorable Minister, the Economic Sustainability Plan envisages, among others, support for the 36 states of the Federation and the FCT. Is that going to be another round of bailout when states are still struggling to amortize the earlier bailout that they received? And in fact, they were asking for some forbearance.
No, it's not a bailout. It's support in the form of grants, and it's 1 billion naira per state for health infrastructure. So for health infrastructure to help mitigate the impact of the COVID-19. Each state needs to be ready to respond adequately if there is escalation of the coronavirus pandemic in their state. So the president approved, and also we have provision in the revised budget for 1 billion naira per state. Some states, as you know, already have got support, so it doesn't include those states. The states that haven't will be getting this support, and it's for health. And each of them have designed their incident action plans, they've costed them, and they will put them to use, and then we'll be monitoring how the utilization is proceeding.
All right, thank you, Honorable Minister. Let's move to Benin, where we have Professor Michael Baden, Professor of Economics and Non-Executive Director, Central Bank of Nigeria. So you've listened to the Honorable Minister, and she has elucidated the master plan for this intervention. And of course, for me, it looks holistic, and of course touches on all aspects of our national life, from agriculture to health, education, and what have you, including infrastructure development. I'd like you to take on, some of the issues that she raised on your own and do further analysis on them, at least for us to know how you feel about what she has said and how workable those templates she has painted are.
Thank you very much, Kirian. Let me say first of all that the economic sustainability plan of the federal government is a very commendable one. It's like the Honorable Minister adverted to, it's a special short-term plan. And I have the sense that it complements the existing revised 2020 budget, and also done within the framework of the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan. The quick response is understandable in view of the negative economic consequences of the coronavirus pandemic. Yeah, she talked about the stimulus package, 2.3 trillion. Again, it's understandable. But for the possible constraints, possible inflationary impact, and then resource constraints, the stimulus package could even have been a little, fatter. I know the plan considered many scenarios and settled for this very amount. It's important and commendable because the plan essentially seeks to move the economy away from the path of recession, such that various sectors of the economy will be stimulated with increased spending, policies, programs, and measures, such that even if the economy contracts in the third quarter of the year, that should not lead into recession. I think that is a basic, goal which has to be pursued. And I want to also say that the plan is a proper response because considering the context, of the plan, there is definitely need for robust fiscal measures, monetary measures, and other measures, aimed at shoring up the real sector of the economy. And I think that is what, the plan aims to do, and provisions have been made. And these various measures articulated in the plan cut across all the sectors, like Kirian has rightly said, right from agriculture and food security, mass housing programs, infrastructure, even up to internal, security. And the plan is very well structured. And it means that, there is the good prospect of delivering on the goals of the plan. For example, you will find that each set of measures or project has a clear objective, and it has the basic elements, and then the estimated cost is also there, and the implementation framework is provided, and then the timeline, which is generally 12 months, is indicated. And so you will find that government and the necessary agencies will have to work in line with what have been structured. And what particularly excites me is that there is costing for every set of measures or project that is there, unlike the EROGP. And this is one major difference, which means then that the plan is focused, and if everything goes on well, with resources being available, then the government should be able to deliver, on what the plan talks about. And for me, the plan, has empirical input, some kind of intellectual input. If you read the plan very well, you will see that the team that produced the plan, considered various projections of macroeconomic aggregates based on the possible behavior of oil price in the world market, and then the quantum of stimulus, right, ranging from a baseline situation that if there is no stimulus, what would happen to economic growth, what would happen to inflation, external reserves, external sector balance, and so on. So those scenarios are there, and it's quite clear that the higher the volume of stimulus, the higher the prospects of averting a recession and then moving into the trajectory of positive growth. Of course, that one would have some impact on inflation, but then it will boost external reserves and also improve the external balance. And importantly, the pillars that have been identified in the plan, the fiscal and monetary policy measures, the real sector measures, and of course, the implementation framework.
I'm just wondering, Professor Michael Badan, we will return to you later in the course of the conversation. Let's go over now to Dr. Yushao Ango at our Kano Network Center. Dr. Yushao, tell us something. Against the background of the timelines for the execution of the plan, namely 12 months, and the resources that have been targeted for this, namely 2.3 trillion naira, it could be more, it could be less. And the fact that the plan attempts to take on multiple sectors at the same time, would you consider this rather ambitious? And in that sense, assuming the answer is yes, would you have wished that this were a more focused plan, taking on a few critical sectors and driving them to the hilt to achieve maximum results rather than spreading out too thinly over multiple sectors?
Good morning. Yes, I have listened to the Honorable Minister. I've also listened to Prop. From my understanding of this particular plan, one thing that was very important, as the Prop said, is the consideration of various scenarios. The worst case scenario, what could go wrong, and simulation, like the Minister said, which was based on how much, really, assuming we are giving 500 billion or certain amounts, what will be the growth plan? What we expect in terms of the level of GDP growth or otherwise. Now, having said that, I think the plan is very good, like the Prof said, but certainly there are concerns. Let me give you, for example, the case of agriculture. The plan is that 20,000 hectares or 200,000 hectares should be used per state as a minimum of 20,000. Now, already we are in July, and for most states, agricultural activity is already on. So I doubt if we can actually bring in new 20,000 hectares or 100,000 hectares, as the case may be, during this period. But like the Honorable Minister said, the plan, especially looking at, for example, the housing sector, she knows that the plan or the implementation will exceed 12 months. So that is what I see. In some cases, it will exceed 12 months. And unfortunately, even in agriculture, it will exceed 12 months, because in reality, except for season, we can implement some aspect of agriculture now. Like, for example, when she mentioned the case of the value chain, we can look at processing, we can look at purchasing and guaranteeing prices for farmers and all that. But growing or at least cultivating the farms probably will take another season, or at most it may be during the dry season farming for some states. So to that extent, I think there may be some issues there. Now, the other issue also, which I think is very important from my perspective, is that having undertaken this plan, using all the relevant agencies and ministries and MDAs of government, including the Central Bank of Nigeria, I think maybe the next plan that will succeed ERGP should also take this kind of approach. Perhaps maybe we may have a better an all-inclusive, a more holistic approach ultimately.
All right, Prof. Thank you indeed. We're back to Abuja here, where we have the Honorable Minister. Now, talking about plans or policies of government or intervention, mechanisms that we have seen in the past, it does appear that in most cases, there's no monitoring plan, to ascertain whether such policies are really working out or not. In this package, is there any monitoring mechanism put in place to, of course, ensure that step by step all actions being taken in the implementation process of this plan, is really, noted? Because one, if you roll out the amount of money that you are talking about, and at the end of the day, you not deliver the goods that you expected, then, of course, the entire effort would have been in vain.
There is a monitoring framework. We're sitting with every delivery agency, whether it's a ministry or parastatal. Also, the economic sustainability plan has now been expanded to include the states representative, some of the governors, and we're detailing step by step what needs to be done in terms of sequencing of activities. For us in the finance arm of the government, we need to know how much we need to avail at each stage of the implementation. And then we also have a monitoring structure that is tracking the performance to enable us provide the next tranche of funds and the next tranche of funds. And we're reporting to the Economic Sustainability Committee, we're reporting to the President, we're reporting to NEC and FEC, and then we are adjusting, because this is a live plan, it's not cast in stones. So as implementation goes on, if there's a need to make adjustments will be made also in the process.
Well, just as well, I mean, still on the monitoring and evaluation, the way we have sometimes experienced these things in the country is fine. You say, for instance, let's look at health. £1 billion to each state government. Is the money going to be given to the state governments, or the states will identify what their particular health infrastructure or other needs are, and the federal government now, of course, goes ahead to fund it, or the monies will be released? Because once you release monies, you know how challenging it might be in terms of dealing with accountability matters.
So the states, each state has made an incident action plan, which is costed at, we told them our limit is 1 billion. They have to do the rest of it. So we'll provide this money in stages. So first of all, there will be a first tranche, and they implement, and the activities are sequenced. When that is examined and is okayed, then we provide another tranche to them. And we're working not just the planning ministry together with the PTF that has also its own monitoring structure of the health intervention in particular.
I want to return to the issue of whether or not the sustainability plan isn't too ambitious against the background of the timelines in the first instance and the quantum of funds that you're expecting. Let's look at the public works component, which in a sense has run into some turbulence on account of the disagreement between the Honorable Minister of State for Labour and Employment and the National Assembly over the proper authority to proceed with the engagement of 774,000 Nigerians, being 1,000 from each of the local governments. Now the idea is to engage them for just 3 months and then get them to undertake public works. What kind of public works can we reasonably do in 3 months? I mean, are they going to be using just head pans and shovels and pickaxes, or what? So that the value arising from this engagement and the expenditure could be longer lasting.
So the benefits are, first of all, when you have resources and you already have planned what to do, you can do a lot in 3 months. When you're building rural roads, just opening roads from farms to market, you can do that in 3 months. And you're using local materials, so you're not importing anything. When you're doing vegetation control to make sure that it improves security, one, it also improves the environment. When you're doing environmental control measures to make sure that the environment is healthy for people, you can do that within a very short period of time. So the issue is a preparation, having all the people in place and ready, and having all the tools that are required for this works to be done, and having designed the whole process. It's possible to do it in 3 months. If we then again, like I said, it's a live plan. If our assessment is we need more than 3 months, then we adjust on the go. So it's not that it's rigid. And the selection process will be, you have to be in a local government to be selected to work in a local government. So all the stakeholders that are related to a local government can make inputs as to who are those 1,000 that will be employed. The federal government cannot on its own say these are the 1,000 people, because how do we know those 1,000 people? The Minister of Labour and his colleague have designed a committee structure that will do that selection process, and it goes from the local government right up to traditional rulers and religious leaders. And I think it's going to work out well at the end of the day, because every stakeholder should have an input in that selection process. But if you permit me, there are two important aspects of this plan that I would like to speak about. One is the support to the informal sector. We have made provisions to support small businesses that are not even registered, to enable them stay in businesses. They're going to get a combination of grants and loans to make sure that their businesses stabilize and they actually grow. And then we also have support for small, medium enterprises by way of structure. So these are already registered enterprises, but they're small in size. They will get structured loans also to help their businesses grow. Then some of the sectors that are really hard hit by the pandemic, for example, the aviation sector, not necessarily just the airlines, but all the value chain that is like the transportation sector supporting airlines, those also will get support. But the support to them will also be by way of structured loans, very low cost interest rates, so that they can come round in their businesses and stay afloat and preserve this. Then we have a home solar system program. It's meant to bridge the gap in the electricity deficit that we have in the country. Yes, we have to develop the national grid, but it takes a lot of time and resources to do that. The solar home systems will be driven by the private sector with financing. Our target is to provide up to 5 million homes with home solar systems. And this is an average of about 25 million people that we can provide electricity. They didn't have electricity before. So those are two important components, and it will complement the informal sector businesses as well as the SMEs.
All right. Kieran, I just like the Honourable Minister to clarify this before we go back to the academics, to give us the benefit of their own experience. Honourable Minister, we're talking about support to the informal sector, unregistered businesses, and so on, separate from the MSMEs, which obviously have some measure of formality. How is the potential support to the informal sector any different from what we have seen in terms of either conditional cash transfers, trader money, and the other components of the social investment programs already being undertaken by the federal government?
So the support to the informal sector will come in the form of low interest loans, and there will be procedures of how to get those. So it's not a palliative, unlike the palliative that we're giving cash transfers to poor and the very vulnerable in the society. These are small loans for their business. So it could be loans up to 1 million naira to help a small business to grow. It's different from we have a segment of the program that is support to the poor and to the vulnerable, and that is the expansion of the existing National Social Investment Program, covering more households, covering more people that have now become vulnerable as a result of this pandemic.
Okay, thank you, Minister. You have actually did a good job of this explanation with respect to the total package that Nigerians will be expecting in the next 12 months. And but we didn't hear much about the oil and gas sector, which of course is a major area in terms of resources for this country. But I'd like to ask Professor Michael Obadan about this. Well, would government have been able to capture the oil sector in this? Because if the minister is talking about local content initiative, which of course is in the Presidential Order 5, we should also be looking at a way whereby we can produce oil and refine our oil so that we don't have any business, importing refined oil and all of that. Now that subsidy has been removed, a lot could happen in that sector. What is your opinion on this? What would you have suggested, should have been done with respect to, inculcating the oil and gas sector in this particular package? Or should it just stand on its own?
Thank you very much, Kingsley. I think it's a very important question. Let me say that, yes, the oil sector has been factored into the plan in some ways. And definitely there are other ways in which it could be factored in the more. You remember I mentioned in my opening remarks the issue of projections, macroeconomic projections, how economic growth will behave, inflation will behave, external reserves, and balance of payments. The oil sector behavior performance is being factored in those projections through the assumptions of different oil price benchmarks because of the important role which the oil sector plays in government revenue and foreign exchange in Nigeria. And so the quantum of stimulus also partly depends on revenue that's likely to be available from the oil sector as well as the non-oil sector. But having said that, the plan also in the area of fiscal policy measures indicated some possible role that the oil sector can play in optimizing revenue for the government. And I think that's where your important reference comes in, the issue of prices of petroleum products. The plan does say that there will be deregulation of petroleum product prices. The implication of that is that the huge amount of money, trillion naira, a little more, that had been used in payment of subsidy will be free and available to government to deploy to purposes and other sectors of the economy. But the important question is this. The government is deregulating. At this point in time, when oil prices are relatively low, it is very, very easy to say we are deregulating, and the masses, the Nigerian people, would be happy because prices are also correspondingly low. And that was the case until last week when the government or NNPC increased the price of PMS to 143 naira per barrel. So, like you rightly said, Kirian, the implication is that as the prices of crude oil rise in the world market, Nigerians will be expected to pay more, per liter of petrol in Nigeria. And the important question then is, to what extent can the prices of oil rise in the world market and the price per liter for PMS in Nigeria also rise, that Nigerians will deem acceptable? I think that is a question that has not yet been answered. And that would be because the regulation is being based on a faulty framework. Faulty framework in the sense that the regulation is being based on the importation of petroleum products. Once you do that, the prices of crude oil rise in the world market. The prices of importing refined petroleum products also rise. Then it would be expected that prices per liter will also rise in Nigeria. And that is why I believe that what is being done now or suggested now, the regulation based on importation of petroleum products is not sustainable. What is sustainable is a medium-term plan whereby the government encourages local investors to invest in refining capacity in Nigeria such that there will be many refineries in the country and there will be competition. Once there is competition, prices of petroleum products in Nigeria are bound to go down, to fall, and be generally acceptable. And so what the government would need to find out from prospective investors in refineries is why have they not, invested in refining capacity in Nigeria for a long time, in spite of the fact that, nearly 20 licenses were issued more than a decade ago, and only the Dangote Group has utilized the license and is producing. That will not be enough. That will not result in reduction in petroleum product price. But from what from what my investigations have shown, prospective investors are scared of two things. Number one, that when they build refineries, government may not sustain the deregulation policy. Government might still be interfering in prices of petroleum products. And two, that crude oil may not easily be available to the refineries. That in the past, the NNPC tended to prefer exporting crude abroad than making them available to local refineries. So if government can give assurance through a memorandum of understanding to prospective investors, then they will be willing to invest, in refineries, and over the medium term, not the next 12 months, within 3 years, we should be able to have a good number of refineries, some of which will produce to satisfy domestic consumption, some of which will produce for export to ECOWAS countries and maybe many other countries. So I think this would be a kind of long-term, medium long-term solution to the problem of deregulation. I fully support deregulation, but it has to be done on within a proper framework.
All right, thank you very much, Professor Mike Obadan. Let's return to Dr. Ango in our Kano Network Center. Dr. Ango, fine, we have the plan, which is on paper. From plan to reality, what are the likely implementation hazards that we will confront, and therefore how do we obviate those hazards?
Well, normally the plan itself has taken care of some of the hazards by specifically assigning responsibility of implementing every aspect of the program to certain MDAs, specific, So to that extent, that is part solution. However, part of the hazard that I see, you have mentioned it earlier, is the issue of cooperation. Yes, the plan, in implementing the plan, effort was made to bring in all the state governments to get the buy-in of the National Assembly and every stakeholder concerned. However, the reality is that some of these aspects may suffer some challenges. Like, for example, the issue of recruitment of the 774,000 hands is already facing the challenge, because already we are seeing friction between the Ministry of Labor and the National Assembly. Now, imagine that the state governments are going to do that, and of course, ideally, it should be devoid of any political or any other interest. But I think in that aspect, in recruiting these 774,000, we're likely to see some issues. I have mentioned earlier the issue of implementation as it affects the agri sector, that I said we're already in the season. However, for the other aspects, like for example, the home production, supply, the challenge again may be in some cases where some states may refuse to actually provide land on time. And I like the fact that the minister said, one is a living plan, it's a plan that is evolving, and the fact that they can move from one place to another if somebody does not cooperate. But those are some of the challenges that we may face. Another challenge that I see, and I like the fact that, for example, the thrust of the plan, which is to try and utilize local materials, to utilize labor, to utilize everything that we have. This is something we have been promoting, even on this program, that whatever we can do here locally, we should do it locally. Whatever we can patronize locally, we should patronize locally. But I want a situation whereby the private sector should be engaged. They do not appear to have been taken fully, into this. So I think this is time to try and bring them in so that there will be orderly implementation of the plan. But otherwise, I think it's a good plan. But then, in terms of implementation, we may have some challenges here and there.
Thank you, Prof. And let's return to the Honorable Minister. Honorable Minister, the issue of engaging the private sector is apt, and we would like to know to what extent is the private sector going to be engaged. In other climes, most of the time, it's the private sector that drives some government policies in terms of active participation, getting involved. For instance, if you're talking about Presidential Order 5, which is all about local content, who is going to bring this content about, if not the private sector? We've had, since the advent of COVID-19, we've had issues with ventilator production. We've also had issues of perhaps drugs and other facilities required to fight COVID-19. And it laid bare, the fact that we are nowhere to be found with respect to what we can do by ourselves. So we depended on importation. Now, how much of the involvement is the private sector in this connection? Talking about local productions, facilities and the products that we might need.
Well, just like the ERGP, the Economic Sustainability Plan also has an overarching philosophy, which is partnership with the private sector. Because it is the private sector that will build the houses, that will deploy the solar home systems, that would also be engaged in building the roads while they are employing our youth to build the roads. We also know that it is not government agencies that would be getting facilities from the central bank in every sector except for the social investment program. In every aspect, it is going to be driven by the private sector. So, for example, for the housing program, there will be like up to 60,000 small developers that are expected to be employed. So we design an RFP and open it up and now invite these small businesses to come into the process. That will be up to about 50 coordinating consultants that would be monitoring every state, because there will be so many activities in different sites. So there's a lot of the work will be driven by the private sector. We're designing, but the implementation will be done by the private sector. It is those developers that would collect these loans from the bank to actually do the development, not government directly.
Well, the Federal Executive Council approved the ERGP, the ESP last month. When is the takeoff date?
So the takeoff date for us is going to be the first launch of the project, and we're going to get a date inside this July from the president. We want, most likely it's going to be the agricultural project that will be the first kickoff, but each project also will have its own takeoff date within the month of July.
All right, thank you very much, Honorable Minister. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We're taking a short break now. When we return from the break, we'll take tweets from our viewers and also continue with the remainder of the conversation.
All right, you're welcome back. And we have tweets now from Nigerians who are also contributing to this conversation by way of tweets. So let's get them read out to see also if the minister will take on any question from the tweets that we have. Mike Anyako says, any meaningful economic sustainability plan now should take into consideration the COVID-19 risk mitigation strategies. The economy has suffered much as a result of pandemic. Government should embark on budget deficit as a way to go. More money should be spent on economy.
Nandom Wuyeb says, a sustainability plan is a roadmap for achieving long-term goals. That's not correct. The Honorable Minister has been explaining, and this is a plan intended for 12 months, even though it might be tweaked, and then anything between 12 and 24 months couldn't possibly be a long-term goal. But Wuyab continues, I think export earnings, remittances, private investment, domestic savings, and external loans remain primary sources of financing for economic growth.
Chris Simeon, for National Economic Sustainability Plan to break even, government should give prompt attention to SMEs and agriculture by giving the people loans and incentives to boost their business expedition.
Law Alpha C, the Economic Sustainability Plan is bound to succeed given the fact that its local content drive and posture are imperative, more so given the global drastic fall in oil prices, which as it were, had remained a major source of revenue for government.
Steve Bond, there is no running away from the full-blown agriculture drive now. The farms need to be secured for farmers as soon as possible.
Dele Jack Solomon, Nigeria's dependence on oil for revenue and foreign exchange makes it particularly vulnerable in this COVID-19 situation. There is need for the public and private sectors to evolve ways of continued diversification of the economy.
Titus Mondenyok, this pandemic have dealt a terrible blow to the psyche of the people. Many have died. Many are on half salaries. Many have lost their jobs and source of livelihood.
Ibrahim Bello, our focus on local content will do us well in terms of economic sustainability. The fact is that the global pandemic has affected everybody, and therefore looking inward will save us a lot. Agriculture is key in this respect.
Comrade Ngala says government should try and invest on agriculture so that the economy will be more stronger, and agriculture is the tool that took Nigeria out of recession.
I have this from Festus Akimboyewa. It says the NASP is great on paper and should help to reduce poverty and unemployment. It should also help to improve our infrastructure. Federal government must effectively embed the goals of the plan in the activities of each government ministry and department if we must deliver on the goals.
Mutana Farouk, NESP has all the possibilities of navigating Nigeria's economy around the pursuit of development and growth. I implore Nigerians to key into the project through their maximum cooperation and support. The success of this project is a success for the prosperity of Nigeria.
Owo Chidikile, I would like to ask the Honorable Minister how they intend to include retirees under contributory pension scheme in the ESP, since those who retired in April 2019 to date have not been paid. All right, Big Daddy there.
Big Daddy is a sustainable plan for FG is to give 500,000 naira, empower beneficiaries permanent appointments rather than disengaging them to go back to the street jobs. Honorable Minister, would you like to address Caleb's question? He's talking about contributory pension scheme in the ESP, saying that do you intend to, or does the policy intend to include retirees under contributory pension scheme in this policy?
Well, thank you very much. A lot of very interesting tweets today. I'd like to just emphasize the one that says we need cooperation, coordination, and partnership. And that's how this plan has to be driven. It cannot be any other way. And on the losses of jobs for Empower, yes, there are Empower employees that have been exited, but there's another batch that is going to come on. And the essence, the whole idea of Empower was you were to be employed for 2 years. During the period, you're developing skills, and then you exit by taking loans from JEEP to start your own business. And that's the concept that we're going back to. These ones that have been exited have stayed for over 3 years, and they have the opportunity to apply for all of these loans that are structured. And we have another batch that is coming in. On the retirees, not in the ESP, but we've actually made provisions from budget funding to be able to pay off retirees, and also to ensure that we'll continue to pay pensions on a monthly basis as we have already been doing. There is some problem with the implementation of the Pension Act that we're working together with PENCOM to be able to resolve. The time lag between when an employee exits to when they're paid is just too wide, and it has to do with the way the program is designed, and we're looking at it closely to see how we can improve on it and close the gap.
Okay, thank you very much, Honorable Minister. I'll reserve another question for you. Let me go to Professor Mike Obada in our Benin Network Center. Professor Mike Obada, well, you've extolled the pluses in the economic sustainability plan, but there's a point I would like you to address, and whether you find this as a fly in the ointment. Now, the plan is already in place. In the meantime, we have also seen pressures coming from the monetary side, arising largely from the measure of the foreign exchange rates. That had always been a source of agitation for a number of financial experts to say, look, we should have a uniform exchange rate. Now, the Naira is exchanging to the dollar at a much higher rate, and we have seen the knock-on effect on the prices of goods and services. How might this impact on the implementation of the economic sustainability plan against the numbers that we have, namely 2.3 trillion naira?
Thank you very much, Kingsley. I will address the question, but permit me just to contribute briefly to two of the issues addressed earlier. One, is the plan ambitious? I will say not quite. Against the backdrop of the enormity of the challenges posed by COVID-19. And should there be, actually there are a number of projects that would straddle into the medium term, in the plan. And should it happen that such projects cannot be implemented, then they definitely should be incorporated in the forthcoming successor plan, to the ERGP. And then secondly, the issue of threat to the plan. I know my colleague, mentioned some of them, but I think the broad ones that we need to take seriously, and the Honorable Minister should also take cognizance, will be the issue of challenge of financing. Now, it seems that two short-term plans are being implemented, concurrently or simultaneously. The revised, capital budget 2020, and then the, ESP, projects and all that. The funding, I'm not so sure, because issue of borrowing, yes, perhaps we are still, we are still credit worthy to borrow, but then the magnitude of debt is already, an outcry. So that one has to be borne in mind. And very importantly, the issue of capacity to implement. Now that, the same MDAs are going to be implementing projects in the ESP and projects in the revised budget, then definitely there is going to be pressure on capacity. So that is even one reason why the plan may be seen as ambitious. So I think government would have to bear that one in mind on how to improve the capacity to implement. Now to the question of unifying the exchange rates, in the country. Yes, the unification has a tendency to increase the naira-dollar exchange rate, which has been the case. And it definitely would have an impact on implementation of planned activities and projects that have large dose of import content. In other words, if a lot of inputs, materials are being imported from abroad for the purpose of implementing the various projects and programs, then definitely devaluation or depreciation of the naira, as has happened through the unification of the exchange rate, would increase the naira cost of such importation. And that one can be a threat too to the successful implementation of all the activities in the plan. But let me say this, that the unification of the exchange rate, does on its own, would normally not even result in sharp depreciation. The depreciation is happening against the background of very weak external reserve base, weak non-oil export earnings. If our export earnings were robust, the external reserve base had not been pressured so much, even if you unify, it will not result as such in sharp depreciation. So those basic fundamentals will need to be taken into account in the issue of unification.
All right, thank you, Prof. And let's go to Kano, where we have Dr. Ango. Well, Dr. Ango, you have listened to Prof, a short while ago, talking about some very areas that we could have glitches in the implementation of this program. Now, I earlier asked a question bordering on the role of subnational government in this exercise, and I wondered if the subnationals are going to really come all up, to embrace this policy with respect to ensuring that it is properly articulated and implemented in their domains, considering also the fact that it is in the states that we have more number of Nigerians, in the localities. So what, in your opinion, do you think the subnationals should do to give the federal government enough support in terms of implementation of this very policy?
Well, I have commented a little bit on this, but I want to believe, the government has done the right thing. They have consulted. They have taken every subnational body into consideration, as in they contacted the governors, and they are part of the implementation somewhat. I think it is in the interest of every state, that they should not create a situation whereby their own society or their people will not benefit from this wholesome support from government. So I think that is essential. But I also want to comment, if I am permitted, on some of the comments earlier made by viewers, particularly the issue of agric, especially the importance of agriculture to the economy, and the fact that agriculture played a major role in bringing Nigeria out of recession. One of the things that this government got right from the beginning was the issue of diversifying the economy, including in the field of agriculture. They have done very well, and I've said it even in this forum, that if we had not done what we did earlier, especially with agriculture, probably what we are experiencing now will have been worse. That is, I'm saying that with closure of the borders and with COVID-19, probably we'll have had a food crisis. So we don't have that. But already prices are beginning to rise. So I believe a more robust approach, going forward is necessary. Another comment which was made, it was the issue of local content. I think, again, this government has bought in wholly, especially with this issue of ESP, into this aspect. Much of what is there in ESP is based on internal and local resources. And I think if from ERGP, that will resolve this problem. And then the issue of, for example, the exchange rate, the merger of exchange rate, trying to merge the parallel market rate with the official rate. My own opinion always is that for as long as the issues raised by PROB are still there, that is, we have weak foreign reserves, we have these challenges with petroleum prices internationally, we may not be able to really, as much as we merge, anytime you merge at a level, there will be again space created by the black market. It will always be like that. So as much as we are trying to merge, we should take cognizance of the fact that merging will not result in 100% merger as we expect, because we don't have enough muscle, to support the complete merger of foreign exchange.
Much, Dr. Yushau Ango. Dr. Ango, on agric, before I bring in the Honorable Minister, I was just wondering, earlier you talked about the fact that the agric farming season for 2020 is already on, so getting 20,000 or more hectares of land might be a challenge. On Good Morning Nigeria last week, we were discussing the universities. We had the Honorable Minister of State for Education here with us, and the Vice Chancellor of the University of Abuja, plus another academic, Professor Martin, who joined us from Maiduguri. And part of what emerged from that conversation is that you have universities with huge campus grounds. Most of the campus grounds left fallow, and you now have persons who are encroaching into those areas. Couldn't universities or some other institutions use their huge grounds for purposes such as we are talking about, even for mechanized purposes, rather than just clearing one little subsistence post which they use for demonstrations in their faculties of agriculture? That's a question we'll take up with you probably when we come for your closing thoughts. But in the meantime, let's return to the Honorable Minister of Finance. Honorable Minister, cutting non-essential funding is one of the critical components of the Economic Sustainability Plan. Is this the right time for the full implementation of the Oronsaye report with regard to the rationalization of agencies of government, well over 600 of them, considering that the National Assembly is still debating whether or not to create more agencies?
Well, there is no better time than now to cut costs of government and also to review the size of government. So whether it is Oronsaye report or any other method that we use, we have to review the agencies that we have, and it makes sense to merge some because there's a lot of duplication of mandates, and it brings about a lot of inefficiency as a result of that. New agencies are being created. I hope we stop also creating new agencies. Instead, we should enhance the ones that we have. You find that most of the agencies that are created is just taking one agency and breaking it up into two. There is nothing that is really new in everything that is being created. In addition to reviewing the size of government, we also have in the revised 2020 budget reviewed and cut out non-essential expenditure. These are expenditure that can wait till a time when things are better. It gave us room to now bring in expenditure that are vital to reflate the economy, to provide for health care. So in the revised 2020 budget, the whole of the 500 billion component that I said was to come from the special accounts has been provided for in the budget. So there's a link, direct link between the ESP and the budget. So it's not that we're implementing two different things side by side. It's already also in the national budget. Yes, we have capacity issues, but we also have a lot of partners that are willing to support us wherever the capacity is short.
Will you get the support or canvass the support of the National Assembly? Because, Kirian, you very well know we had touched on this sometime in the past. There's virtually, the agencies we're talking about are statutory corporations, in the sense that they are the creature of statute. And for you to tamper with their existence or their mandate, we also need to revert to the National Assembly.
Yes, of course.
Is this been done, or is
Yes,
it going to be kicked
so
off?
first of all, the head of service and secretary of the government have been given the mandate to do this review. So the review will be a holistic one, government-wide one. So once that review is done and an identification of what needs to be done is completed, through the Federal Executive Council, the President will ask the National Assembly will request the National Assembly to make the necessary changes in any enabling law where such review is anticipated.
All right. I think we have indeed exhausted the time available to us this morning for this particular conversation. Very important and topical issue for that matter. So at this point, I would like to appreciate the Honorable Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Hajiya Zainab Ahmed, for sharing her thoughts and, of course, the insights that she brought into this. It's been a pleasure talking to you, ma'am.
Thank you for having me. Good morning, Nigeria.
Professor Michael Badan, Professor of Economics and Non-Executive Director, Central Bank of Nigeria, I would like to thank you for coming and, of course, as usual, giving us an overdose of your experience. And again, Dr. Yushao Ango, Associate Professor of Business Entrepreneurship and Dean School of Postgraduate Studies, Kaduna State University, we also thank you for your time and your thoughts. All right, and Kingsley,
Yeah, so that does it for us today on Good Morning Nigeria. We appreciate you for tuning in. The program returns tomorrow, same time as always, 7 o'clock in the morning. Until then, stay safe and be well. I'm Kingsley Osadalo.
And I'm Kirian. Have a good day.